Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thanks so much for coming. My name is Megan Hoyer. I'm the Director of Public Programs and Public Engagement here at the Whitney. And it's my pleasure to introduce Alexis Rockman for tonight's lecture about Grant Wood, entitled A Chilling Make-Believe. The occasion for Alexis's talk is, of course, the exceptional exhibition of Grant Wood's work, American Gothic and Other Fables, currently on view here at the Whitney. This exhibition brings together the full range of Wood's art, from his early arts and crafts decorative objects and impressionist oils through his mature paintings, murals, and book illustrations. The result is that the show reveals a complex artist whose image as a farmer painter was as mythical as the fables he depicted in his art. I want to thank my colleagues Barbara Haskell and Sarah Humphreyville, who curated this exhibition, and I also want to remind all of you that the museum is open until 10 p.m. tonight, so if you want to see the show following the talk, the galleries are open. Although Wood is best known, of course, for American Gothic, the double portrait of a pitchfork-wielding farmer and a woman commonly presumed to be his wife, his other fables are just as unsettling. In particular, his landscapes reveal a romanticized and ambivalent view of a pre-industrialized rural world. Alexis Rockman also specializes in fantastic landscape paintings. His work over the last 3 decades, is that more than that? More than that. Presents a darkly surreal vision of the collision between nature and civilization. He has described his practice as, quote, turning science inside out and rolling around in it to make it almost indistinguishable from fiction. I took that from a Whitney wall label. Yeah. Oh, really? I like the fiction. I wanted to make the connection. His exhibition, Alexis Rockman, The Great Lakes Cycle, a major touring exhibition of large-scale paintings and watercolors, as well as field drawings of the Great Lakes, is currently on view at the Grand Rapids Art Museum and will travel to institutions in the Great Lakes region, including the Chicago Cultural Center and the Museum of Contemporary Art Cleveland over the next year. He also has a show entitled Wallace's Line at the Baldwin Gallery in Aspen, Colorado, that's currently on view. And he is in the midst of co-curating with Catherine Gasteau an exhibition called The Solace of Amnesia, which will be on view at the Hall Art Foundation beginning in May. So he's really busy, and we're really grateful that he was able to do this and be here tonight. So in his talk tonight, Rockman will situate Wood in a tradition of American art in which national identity depends on a personal visual vocabulary. The artist will also discuss his own long-standing engagement with wood through landscape paintings that mix contemporary dread and hope for our ecological future. So please join me in welcoming Alexis Rockman.
I'm checking. Oh, it works. Okay, great. It's wonderful to have competence, which is really what this institution's about. Everything has been fantastic, and I want to thank everyone that helped me with this, Megan especially, so thank you so much. I have to say that this is kind of a dream come true, because growing up in Manhattan, the Whitney's always been the sort of mecca for me, going there as a young artist and seeing the biennials and the one-person shows. It was always a goal, and still is a goal, to have a one-person show here. But one thing at a time, and get your foot in the door. But it really is a thrill to be here and talk about Grant Wood, because I can't say that Grant Wood really influenced me, and I'll explain that, but there's something about him I identify with, and it's a sort of contrarian sensibility and his stubbornness and insistence of doing it his way. And really, he had colleagues and people that, he felt comfortable with, I'm sure, but he really is a weirdo and an outsider, and that's something I really identify with in terms of art history. So I just want to thank everyone, and Adam, who had the vision. This came from a conversation I had with him at a cocktail party, I think initially. So Adam, the director, really deserves a lot of credit. I don't know if he's here. But so thank you to just having me here. I want to talk a little bit about, first, Grant Wood and, oh, you know what? Let me just say something. Whoops. All right. I think something's just a little bit out of order here. Okay. let's talk about it in terms of Grant Wood came to my attention as an artist, other than American Gothic, and looking at these peculiar paintings that were sort of obviously very reactionary at the time, that were made in the 30s by some hick from the Midwest. I started to think about Grant Wood when I was planning this painting called The Farm. And this came about from a conversation I was having with Creative Time, the public art programming institution. Ann Pasternak was the director at the time. And she said, Alexis, I want you to start thinking about something. We want to commission you to do a painting about biotechnology and agriculture. So I started to poke around and think about what did I want to do in terms of the history of American landscapes and farms. So I came across, first of all, paintings like this, which are in the exhibition, which are amazing. All made in the 30s. You know what, I actually want to try something. Megan, can you come here for a second? I'm missing, where did the farm images go from Creative Time? Because I see we're at 1 here. Okay, there we go, thank you. Great, okay, perfect. All right, so I'm gonna give you a little tour of these farm images just to sort of show you what I discovered as like a 40-year-old artist. And these were really a revelation, and I'd never seen anything like it. These ecstatic, sort of miraculous images of agriculture that had nothing to do with realism as far as I was concerned. They became the sort of landscape of the mind. This was something that I thought was completely unique, and I started to think about it in terms of, if we're thinking about our relationship to what the agricultural past is, I was trying to imagine what biotechnology might bring to us in the future, and what could we glean from images like this to fantasize about what the future might be like in terms of biotechnology. And to be very clear, my position on biotechnology is profound ambivalence. I think it's incredibly dangerous, and it's our only hope. This is a Thomas Hart Benton, which I'm very well aware of. So to give you, but it became useful, and I'll show you why. This is a drawing that I did. Originally, it was going to be very horizontal. And I started to think about this in terms of Americana and the idea of what are the crucial pieces of iconography for agriculture in terms of America's corn and wheat. And then if you're dealing with biotechnology, you have to deal with fruit flies, and there it is broken down. So what I started to do is think about this as a timeline, and taking a pig and a cow and a chicken and taking them through their paces from their ancestral stages, contemporary, and future. Then after doing all this work and getting ready to make the painting, I decided this wasn't what I wanted to do. And I wanted to make it something that was a lot closer to Grant Wood. Here I am taken by Dorothy, my partner in the front row, in the year 2000. This is in 1999, 2000, and I'm in the middle of this painting, and you can see that I'm looking at an old print of a pig right here, and not sure what I'm doing, probably faking it and wasn't really panning at all. And probably flirting with Dorothy. This was an image that was very important to me at the time because it sort of had this institutional detachment in terms of like, it's very scary, it's technology. What happens in this building stays in this building, supposedly. And if you look at the finished painting, you can see, if I can get this, oh, here we go. You can see up here that this is a detail of the painting that I added later, and that is alluding to this, I guess it's a drawing or a lithograph of Grant Wood's. So anyway, this is how it ended up. Partially, it was a big painting that was 8 by 10 feet, and then it was installed on Lafayette and Houston Street saying, "How's life on the farm?" And that was the sort of the public art part of this project. And then the painting went on a tour that Marvin Heiferman co-curated called Paradise Now, and it went around to various museums, including the Tang at Skidmore and various other places for a couple of years. So there's the finished painting. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about Grant Wood's paintings. And the thing, let's get sex out of the way, because you can't help but see sex everywhere. Or I can't, maybe. Is a cigar just a cigar? So Dennis Carden did a funny Instagram thing, is like, that looks like a penis. I'm not so sure, but anyway. What I love about these paintings and seeing them in person is really different than seeing them as postcards or T-shirts, or if you Google American Gothic, you can see that it's become this. I don't even understand why it's so iconic, frankly. It's not my favorite painting at all, but I do like this little plant still life on the porch back there. But the thing that's fascinating about this is that this is mythology, right? Who are these people? It's creating a sort of sense of epic identity of what America never, well, what it was or supposedly was. It has a lot in common with the type of things that we're dealing with now in terms of our political landscape. Here's a titan of industry showing the map of all the land he owns. I love this. The geometry of this guy's head is fantastic. Remember that this is made during a period where it is the Depression. You're dealing with people that are miserable, right? So look at this fantasy of, Paul Revere letting you know that the English are coming, or what I can't even remember what the story is, and I really don't care. But what I love is that this is an amazing wonderland of like a dollhouse. Like you can really get in there, and I'm going to show you some details later. And again, we're going back to sex, like what is going on here, and what is going to happen to this chicken? I don't want to know. Again, like, look at this butterfly. Like, what is it doing there? Exactly, why there? And what's that? I'm not sure. These trees are bizarre. I mean, they're like some sort of blossoms, but the rest of the landscape looks like it's autumn. Anyway, I'm not interested in the portraits as psychological for their insight. I'm interested in the iconography of what's happening around them. And again, look at this. This is like the craziest, most animation-looking encounter of violence on the highways. And you can tell that this artist is obviously very tense about what's going on. I mean, he's just like this, in terms of his life. Only a very tense person could make that. But the thing to remember that is also happening in this is that these are somewhat reactionary paintings. They are not about Europe. They're not about being urban. They're not about modernism. They are longing for a past that is both appalling and seductive. Now I'm going to give you a little tour of what else is happening in America, just to give you a context of how crazy these paintings are and how actually endearing they are. Because I really see them as longing for escape. And that's something that I'll explain a little bit later in terms of how much I identify with that. So you're dealing again with, you have the Depression, and then you have things that are leading up to World War II, right? And are these the products of cities, industry, Wall Street, Europe, right? Is that what's happening with all these? I mean, there's a lot of similarities to what's going on in terms of our national landscape. The suffering that's happening in America, is it because of Europe and the major cities? I don't know, but it's an interesting thing. And there's a bitter debate about what being an American is and what is it to be an American after the fall, right? You have a culture war going on. And this is a Walker Evans photograph of obviously an abandoned farm that looks like possibly it could be corn. One thing I have to confess, I'm a city kid. I don't know a damn thing about farming. So when I'm talking about these farms, I'm not interested in them as farms, and my painting's not really about real farms. It's about how we imagine collectively what farming has been and what it might be, right? You have to understand also that when Grant Wood's making his paintings, he's looking to Northern Europe, Hans Memling, people like that, very meticulous, almost the invisible hand, to craft something that is really about leaving the planet almost and looking down on it. And he was attacked. He was brutalized after his enormous success with American Gothic. He really suffered and really did not have that much success in terms of an international art scene as it may. Jansen, the famous art critic, I read his textbooks. Did anyone read Jansen when they were in art school? He hated Grant Wood so much he called him a Nazi, right? And this is someone who's a Roosevelt, all these painters that were Thomas Hart Benton, all these guys were Roosevelt liberals, but he painted like a Nazi. That's really what Jansen was saying. So you have Walker Evans, who's dealing with just obviously the struggle. This is a chain gang in Alabama. Dorothea Lange, dealing with the Dust Bowl, dealing with agricultural systems that failed, the family had failed, capitalism had failed. It's just incredible suffering, people living. I mean, it looks unbearable what these people are going through. That's pretty ironic. Painful. Oh, my water's in the other room. Hold on. Then you're dealing with someone like Alexander Hogue, who came to my attention when I did a survey show at the Smithsonian about 8 years ago, and they have a number of paintings of his, and there's a sort of, ham-fisted doofus illustrationalness to this, especially the prairie dog, which really has to go. But there's something I really like about it because it's in your face and literal and dealing with these problems. It's not fantasizing. I mean, is that rattlesnake heading into this crevice right here, just like Leonardo DiCaprio in The Revenant? I don't know, but it gives you a sense. There's something so over the top about it, and I love the patterns of these sand dunes and stuff like that, but there's also something kind of embarrassing about them. This sort of relentless all-overness of it. And this is just fantastic and really ridiculous. I mean, the thing that I love about Grant Wood and some of these artists is that you really have mixed feelings all at the same time. And it's kind of ecstatic to have this incredible sense of, appalling disgust and just, reverence. Aaron Douglas, the African-American painter from the 30s, who was making paintings about the authentic identity of history and narrative and the African-American experience. Another idea of making myths. I believe that's Chicago in the center. I guess and I really didn't do my homework about this artist, but just intuitively it looks like leaving the South and trying to get north. Then, of course, you have the glamour of Sheeler, right? Who doesn't want a Sheeler painting? It's like, you took a Cezanne and you force-fed it through a mechanism that created this incredible thing that's, as they say, very precise. It's the glorification of industry. Here's a photograph he did for the Ford Motor Company, and, who wouldn't want to buy a Ford if you saw that? It's just so beautiful. Another painting of his. There's nothing to do with toxic waste or pollution. This is about the glamour and glory of industry. Another thing, and remember, I'm just giving you a little tour of what else is happening. Alice Neal make paintings about political meetings, suffering, the mythology of class and urban life, and so on. Very different, very blunt, very painful. And there, you can even see, this is the antidote to Sheeler, right? That's pollution. It doesn't look like a tree, does it? No. Thank you. Then, of course, one of the great paintings in this collection, you have Hopper and Early Sunday Morning, or whatever it's called. And, this is, again, it's desolate, but it's also elegiac, the light. It's redeeming. It's showing you what's possible. Hopefully you're not too hungover when you look at that, right? Sunday morning. And there you have a Hopper print that's really about noir and deep shadows and the dread of just urban life and what's hiding, taking German expressionism and giving it definitely a New York feel. I don't know where this is supposed to take place, but it really feels like New York. This, on the other hand, does not feel like New York. This is something that's really, it seems like a small town or a small city, and you have an architectural draftsman who may or may not have a job, but it really looks abandoned and desolate. Then, of course, you have one of my all-time favorites, Charles Birchfield, and he's again off on his own planet, doing his crazy, ecstatic hallucinations of, trying to deal with music. Right? This blue jay, is that the blue jay's song, or is it not? Singing to another tree, who cares? Is just great. This is a little bit more melancholy, but again, it's the end of the season, the sad sunflowers, you're dealing with, as scary as this might be, it's not really that terrifying. Then here's an artist that I really am not crazy about, but I just had to put him in, Thomas Hart Benton. And as much as it was a revelation to go to the Met and see that room, I just find it completely fraudulent. But it's important to have this work in this talk because it shows that there's really no tension in these, right? This is about the celebration of the Arcadian past, and he's not ambivalent at all, as far as I'm concerned. Remember, this is my subjectivity. I love this because it's very formal, and again, like a wall, and it helped me sort of formulate my, my farm painting before. I mean, that is just a load of you-know-what. But again, it's just not my taste. You know, it's like Rubens on a bad trip. The movies. Now, one of the great things about giving talks is you put whatever you want in here. One of the things I love is the history of film, and you're dealing with 1939 to 1941. There's a lot going on in the film industry. As everyone knows, the great era, or the great year of Hollywood is 1939. It's the year that brought both Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz, strangely, officially by the same director, even though many other people were involved. So you're dealing with, this is live action elements, miniatures, matte paintings by the MGM matte department, Warren Newcomb. Again, this is all a painting up here, right? I'm showing this because this is also a myth, right? You're dealing with Gone with the Wind, right? This is the Civil War. This movie's crazy. It makes no sense, but somehow you cannot stop watching it. It's just so amazing. And I just got the Blu-ray. I'm dying to see it in Blu-ray. I was watching it on Turner Classic Movies the other night, and it really, it was just fascinating by what's not in it and what type of denial there is going on. I mean, this is just beautiful. You have the live action horse and cart and people, and then the rest are just basically layers of paintings. The Wizard of Oz. Landscape look familiar, right? You're dealing with, even the Emerald City looks like a Grant Wood. Or inside of a television set on acid with the tubes. Again, even, you know, look at this. These trees, the geometry of this landscape, you're dealing with things that are just incredible. The crossover. And you know that the production designer and all the artists that worked on this were definitely looking at him. Here's a matte painting. You can see this is the yellow brick road, and you can see this is the 256 shot, and then these will be, this is the matte where the live action will be put in, right? But look at these landscapes and these clouds. Fantasia, 1940, not 1939, but again, this is the pastoral Beethoven sequence of Arcadian mythology from Greek mythology, but this is after the storm and you're seeing the sun come up, and again, this is a magical place. This is a place of the mind. There's nothing to do with reality whatsoever, as you can see by this chimera-like creature. Can't talk about animation without mentioning Warner Brothers and Bugs Bunny. So this is, again, the myth of Central Park, right? This is the boat pond. This is, I don't even know what era this is from. It doesn't matter. But it's this idea that these images create a sense of mythology and glamour. Who wouldn't want to come to New York if it looked like that, right? Michael Maltese did a lot of the layouts for these, and he's super talented. Go to some Disney animation. This is the opening sequence in Dumbo when the storks are delivering the infants to the circus, the infant animals to the circus. And again, you can see this stork's eye view, right? And there's Florida, and the circus is in Florida for the winter, right? And these little packages have baby animals. And here they are coming with their little parachutes into the winter quarters, and Dumbo's mom is somewhere in here, and Dumbo, remember, is not part of this scenario, and I can't even watch this movie, I cry too hard. But the point is that this is a type of mythology in the beginning of the enchantment of what circuses are, right? It's not the cruelty and abuse of animals and so on and all the other stuff that we know is going on. Get a sip of water. So, as Megan mentioned, I really want to talk just about the landscapes because that's what I'm into in terms of Grant Wood. And as Dorothy pointed out, the patterns and fragments of Grant Wood's are really an organizing principle, and that's why this part is titled this. So you're going to see some of my paintings juxtaposed, next to, interspersed, just thinking about things that we have in common, things we don't have in common. And here we have that Paul Revere painting again. And as I said, this is a sense of enchantment and meticulous spatial development. So much so, this is a detail of the Paul Revere on horseback. And you can look at these pieces of light, and there's someone waking up out the window, or is that a dog? I can't tell. There's light coming out, and you can see this sort of meticulous attention to detail. This is a painting of mine from 1994 after I got back from Guyana in South America for 2 months with my good friend Mark Dion, and we were sort of coming out of the jungle. We'd been camping in the rainforest for 6 weeks, and we went back to Georgetown to sort of regroup before we got back on our plane and sort of like climatize, because I basically was in shock being in the jungle since I grew up in Manhattan for that long. I was like, after a week, going crazy, and I survived it, but never again. Mark, of course, was completely, it was just another day to him. He's so tough and smart. But anyway, we went to Georgetown is on the Caribbean. Guyana is on the northern coast of South America, right next to Venezuela, ex-British Guyana. And we went to this beach called the Demerara Beach, which is right next to where the Demerara River is, which is the major river, kind of like the Amazon, but going in the other direction. And it was the most disgusting place in the world I'd ever been. I thought there must be dead human bodies here somewhere. I couldn't tell. Dead porpoises, bags of garbage, a dead horse, all sorts of, oh my God. And I'm like, first I was kind of like, who the hell wants to, then I'm like, I want to make a painting about this from the point of view of a fly, because a fly would dig this, right? This is like the dinner bell for the fly. So this painting's big, it's like 10 feet tall. And in order to make this fly, they used to have this beautiful fly model at the Museum of Natural History. They didn't have the internet or anything like that, and I had to figure out the morphology of this fly, which was really a big challenge. It was great, it was really fun. Leads me to a fly's eye view, a vulture's eye view, a red-tailed hawk's eye view of this impossible landscape by Grant Wood, and we were just discussing, are those two buttocks? What is going, it's just so, a square peg in a round hole, or, there's all sorts of crazy, wonderful things, but there's also a lot of sexuality in this, as far as I can tell, unless I'm completely projecting. And this painting is just so elegiac and so just magical. I just love it. I think it is my favorite. Look at these tiny little cows that are over there. And this painting is only like 3 feet wide. It's just amazing. The atmosphere, this is theatrical to an inch of its life. This has nothing to do with nature. It's as if Grant Wood made these paintings in his mother's basement. That's how much of a shut-in he is. He has nothing to do with farming as far as I'm concerned. Here's a painting of mine that I did when I got back from Guyana, imagining being a wasp chasing this beetle over the Essequibo River while we were in the rainforest. So again, this is a elegiac point of view, looking down. It's impossible. This is a little bit later. This is a painting I made for the U.S. Embassy in Antananarivo in Madagascar. But again, you can see that the fragments, this is fragmented rainforest and patterns of what used to be rivers and stuff. If you go back to this, you can see that it has a relationship to patterns and fragmentation. This is obviously an optimistic version on some level, I guess, of what the land can be. And on the other hand, this is a little bit more pessimistic, and you can see here are the bulldozers and all that other stuff. Dorothy suggested this. This is the oxbow that's up at the Met right now. This is another perspective, probably has more to do with me, by Thomas Cole. I guess it's from the 1820s or so. Anyone know the date? I didn't look it up. But the point is here, again, you have the fragmentation of the landscape for agriculture, right? And then this is what's left, and this tree has had it, basically, and that is the romantic trope of the devastated tree trunk. Here's a watercolor I did in the late 90s after I got back from a trip to Brazil. I was commissioned by the Museum of Natural History to make a cycle of images about forest fragmentation. And this is how 3 species of possum in Brazil near Manaus are affected by forest fragmentation. And again, this is like the geometry and fragmentation of what's happening to some of our tropical rainforests and how it's affecting animals that we don't often think about. I bet you didn't even know there were multiple species of possum in South America, because I really didn't know until I looked into it. I always thought it was the Virginia possum and that's it. And then you have to go to Australia to find the other stuff, and Tasmania. So I'm going back to Grant Wood's paintings. I don't care about what this title is, but I don't know what this is. It's just, what is it? Okay, that's even the title, right? Yeah. All right, I don't believe it, in spite of the title. I don't know what type of trees these are. This has nothing to do with anything. I love it, but I don't know what the hell it is. And that's what's fantastic about it. Yeah, I bet you're wondering about that. Farms, again, what is this? Is that tulips? What is that? Anyone know? Who would dare know? The point is, it's not really about this farming, it's about this guy's back, right? So again, sex is everywhere. I'm not projecting. What's this guy doing? He's mowing the path. Why? What is that? Someone's beating a rug? Is that an allegory for something? I don't know. But the point is that there's all sorts of really tense, weird stuff going on in here. Like, what's this person doing to this tree? Like, that's too big to bring inside, isn't it? It's not like getting something for the table. What is it? What's going in that basket? I don't want to know. Here's a painting of mine from a couple years ago. It's sort of a sequel to The Farm. And again, it's like the idea that this geometry transforms the landscape. You can see there's patterns and fragmentation and all that stuff. And again, all this stuff becomes geometric on some level. There's your Italian Americans or French and whatever. Ideas of nationalism on tomatoes. Everyone has an idea about that. Seeing into the cow. Is that older corn? And again, you're looking at these landscapes and you're seeing like this is very bucolic. I don't really know what does this bridge go into this building? It doesn't really look like it. This water tower does what to what? It's like, it doesn't really make any sense. I don't care, but if you think about it logically, there's nothing like determinist about it. It's like really mysterious and kind of uncanny, right? And that's really, I think, a good word for what Grant Wood does. Is it's airless. It has plenty of life, but it comes from this sort of, this tension and ambivalence. I don't know what happened. I have an image, but it's not showing up. Technical support. It was there. Yeah, it should be this. It was just there.
Do you know what the image was?
Yeah. I mean, doesn't matter that I know. Whatever, we don't need it. You'll never know what it was. Another Grant Wood, Herbert Hoover's birthplace. I mean, really, who cares? The point is that this is like, he cares, and that's all I care about. This is like a detail of this painting, and I don't really want to know why, but what is this? Is this like it looks like a hoof, a bunch of hoofs with some fur on it. Like, what is going on? I love it. It's crazy, this tree. It looks like someone's like lung, cardiovascular. Am I projecting? I don't know. Here's a painting of mine from last year that's in my Great Lakes cycle. But again, you can see this is called Watershed, and it's about pristine ecology and how farms and urban contexts have an effect on freshwater ecosystems that end up in the lakes. So you can see that this is actually, I think it's Shanghai, but that's an idea about globalism. You can see the sequel to the farm painting. There's the square cow and stuff like that. There's a pig with porcine salmonella. And again, I'm interested in this as sort of partially this idea of this bucolic and almost elegiac light and space, and then there's a dark side to it. So, but I really appreciate what Grant Wood is doing. It's something to react to. There was a whole painting. This is a freshwater ecosystem that this painting's 12 feet wide. There was a whole painting in here, and then I ended up painting over it deliberately, but it was so painful because I had spent weeks painting all these fish and all these turtles and crayfish and stuff like that. And then part of the painting, and the idea of the painting was that it had to be destroyed. Here's a Grant Wood. I guess it's a litho, a drawing, and it's not a litho, it's a drawing or a pastel or something like that. It's called Innocence or the Loss of Innocence, or what is the official title of this? Adolescence. Like, what? What is, like, do these chickens not have feathers? Is that what's happening? Waiting for feathers? But the point is it's really bizarre. And I love it, and I think it's just, I mean, look at these feet. Patterns everywhere. Again, this might as well be a landscape, right? There's the agricultural stuff. Here's a painting of mine from a couple of years ago. Again, there's the buildings, right? So I wasn't thinking of that painting, but I was delighted to see it. I don't even know if I had seen it when I thought of this painting, but I love the idea that it's connected to it, and it really, I must have gotten, the trope of the barn and the tractor and the silo from something to do with him somehow, because it's obviously there. Maybe he was looking at all those other paintings. Here you have Mike Pence. Prescient, proto-portrait, or it's just every white dude ever that raised a golf club. Again, you can see that this has been manicured as his head has, as his fingernails have, as everything else has, manicured within an inch of its life. It's lifeless, but somehow it's alive. This is it's not really a painting, it's actually a mixed media collage embedded in resin. Let me explain. I painted this. This is AstroTurf. This is like a poor man's 3D diorama. A real golf ball, real golf club that I sawed off. And I made this out of garbage and printed stuff and collaged it and painted it and then embedded it in resin, and it weighs like 300 pounds. It was a great business decision. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. The point is there's the golf balls and there's the monster that's eating Pence, and there's his femur. So I was also prescient. There's a condom, used condom, of all sorts of, Grant Wood and I have just amazing ability to time travel. Now I'm going to talk about some other artists that I don't know if they'd like it or not. I don't really care whether they would want to be included in this talk, but it's my talk and that's what's going to happen. Descendants of Grant Wood, whether they like it or not, that aren't me. Archfogger. Richard Archfogger, Dorothy's idea. I mean, come on, how can you not? It's perfect. That is, I think it's a pastel, I'm not sure, as David Nolan. Or Gagosian now. That I believe is a pastel drawing. And again, that's a pastel drawing, and you can see how obviously this has been turned into patterns and landscape. I mean, you guys are smart. Neil Jenny. Pot-smoking Neil Jenny. Again, he's creating this mythology of North America, right? Deforestation, ideas about land use and articulation, barbed wire fences, the last tree in North America. But the point is it's a very meticulous, airless articulation of space and objects that have a purpose. What I love about this piece, and there are a lot of things to love about it, I assume that this is a reflection, right? Or is it ice? Is this leaf floating on it? Who knows, whatever. Acidification, obviously from acid rain. I thought it said Arcadia, partially because I'm dyslexic, but also because that's what I wanted to see. And I love how it plays with that because of the A confused me. But North America, acidified. Dead cattails. And that looks like is that an oak leaf? I can't tell. That's definitely a maple leaf. Edruchet. I'm not sure if he believes this, but who cares? Not a bad world, is it? And again, this meticulous attention to detail that's almost like Dürer down here, which I love. I've never seen this in person. I'd be curious to see what that's like. But again, is it ironic? Probably. Who knows? I don't know. This I know isn't ironic. And this also connects to Gone with the Wind, right? It's the end titles. It's like finished, fin, but it's also obviously sin. It's the sun setting, the end of whatever. It's the end. All right, now we're going to talk about the curtain. Do you know what I'm going to be talking about? Parson Weems's fable. And that is really peculiar. This is the weirdest painting I've ever seen. Parson Weems told this fable, the idea that George Washington cut down the cherry tree like a bad little boy, and then because his father was such a great parent, he couldn't tell a lie and confessed. That's why he became a great leader and a great military leader. I don't know what that means. It seems preposterous. But this is a great painting. I also hate it. It's so bizarre and weird. And I'll show you some details. Let me just give you a little bit of a background of, I don't know if Grant Wood was thinking of this, but I certainly am. Charles Wilson Peele's collector in the museum, a way of revealing his collection and who he is. And again, you have the image of the mastodon that was exhumed and the national bird before it became the boring yet beautiful carrion eater, the bald eagle. So again, this is an idea about mythology, right? He's presenting to you his collection of natural history ephemera, et cetera. You can see here, is that a dinosaur skeleton? It seems a little early for that, but maybe a mammoth. Okay, now we're getting into the details of what this is, right? And if you look back here, like there's obviously some African-American context or those slaves, what's going on, right? But, I mean, all right, come on, what's going on with this? Unfinished Gilbert Stuart painting, collaged on. Why? From 1796, right? Like what? This is known as the Athenaeum, right? I don't know where it is. Anyone know where it is? But the point is that this is the strangest decision to take this and put it on a so-called boy's head, a body, and like, what is this? This is the drapes, they're cherries. That's crazy. What about these individual blades of grass? Like the mower couldn't reach there? What's going on? This is the bottom of the cherry tree, right? Like it makes no sense. This is grass. I mean, I love it, but this could be Paolo Uccello. It's so strange. This is a painting I just finished, and I was thinking of the Peele painting, and this is from my Wallace's Line show in Aspen that's up right now, about Alfred Russel Wallace, the great naturalist, who was a contemporary of Darwin's, who discovered evolution through natural selection around the same time as Darwin, and never really got the credit he deserved. So this is his paraphernalia, right? He's going off into the unknown in Malaysia, and this is his boat, his hat, his butterfly net, his satchel, his trunk, and this is a northern cassowary. But the idea is that this is his collecting museum. He's showing his collection, yet he hasn't found it yet because it's somewhere out here in the jungle. And he's gonna, like any good Victorian naturalist, collect it and describe not only what these unknown species are, but how they relate to us and what we mean to the world in relationship to the history of evolution. I couldn't help but notice that this butterfly had a strangely coincidental placement to that portrait of Woods where, remember the young man with the butterfly on his leg? Like, that's uncanny. So, what does this mean? I mean, I'm going to wrap this up by basically saying that I think the timing of this show is fascinating. I know it was planned before Trump, but it really makes sense now. There are a lot of parallels. Our looming ecological crisis, which is real and terrifying. I don't think that that in the 30s people could comprehend what that means or what that might mean, but they had their own misery in terms of the Dust Bowl and the failure of agriculture and the failure of capitalism. And we're both dealing with existential crises, the 30s and now. We have a rise of fascistic tendencies that we know led to World War II. Hopefully, who knows? It's terrifying, right? But I have a sense of dread about the future. And I think, as much as I have mixed feelings about Grant Wood, and there are paintings that I just detest, I don't know why, it just makes my skin crawl, but I also love them. But there's something about what he's doing and what I think I'm doing that has a connection, and that's that we both made work to cope and to reconcile our ambivalence about being alive, the things that we feel uncomfortable about in ourselves, and he's definitely a fascinating character. One of the things that I really get from him most of the time is that he has a sense of hope. And most of the time I have a sense of hope, and I want to have a sense of hope, but then I drink a Gatorade and throw the plastic in the recycling, not knowing where that's going, and somehow my paint thinner ends up going down the drain, and I don't know where that's going. So there is a sort of existential feeling to all that. Thanks so much for coming. I love questions if anyone has any.
Surrealism was flourishing in the period of Wood's maturity, and he obviously was aware of it.
Yes.
How about for you? Do you pay attention to the Surrealist legacy? I mean, visually, I think you might, but I don't want to presume anything.
Well, who doesn't love a 30s Dali, right? Or Miro. I was going to have Miro and some of that stuff too, but I wanted to keep it American. The thing I love about surrealism with a capital S is that it has a sense of anything goes and the unconscious can rule the world. I really don't have that much in common with that. I'm coming from a place where it's very much about the logic of whatever I'm thinking, and it's not the unconscious, it's not the history of natural history and scenarios, and I went through a lot of trouble, for instance. I know it's crazy to see a cassowary and a curtain in the jungle, but besides that leap, that butterfly net, I hope, is credible for the 1860s, and I went through a lot of effort with the trunk and all that stuff. So there's more of an anthropological or natural historical lens that I see things through. But as much as I love surrealism with a capital S. Come on.
Do you think that the kind of prevalence of dystopian imagery now is desensitizing people to it?
That's where you got to get more badass, because probably, I think people, I'll give you an example. I did a project called Manifest Destiny that I started in the late 90s because I was so terrified of climate change that Chris Morris worked on in the audience as a visionary architect. I wanted to show the implications of what climate change might do to New York City looking at Brooklyn from Manhattan. It ended up being a painting that was at the Brooklyn Museum. It's now in the Smithsonian, 24 feet long. I worked on it for off and on 7 years and talked to everyone I could get my hands on scientifically, Goddard, James Hansen, the great NASA scientist, ecologist, and so on. And I made this painting that terrified me. And the show opened, and then The Day After Tomorrow happened, the movie, which is that stupid, like Roland Emmerich, nonsense about, instant freezing. And it totally undermined obviously movies have a lot of reach and they're emotional and they're in real time and they're fun, often funner than art, right? I don't necessarily think so, but they have more reach. And it really just showed me exactly, there is fatigue to all this stuff. And obviously, how can you not feel a sense of futility in this political climate where the very, Scott Pruitt, can someone kill that guy already? I mean, come on, this guy's gotta go. And so, yeah, I think we're exhausted, we're fed up, we don't know what to do. We wanna have a martini and do something else. Yeah.
Alexis, you brought up motion pictures. I'm surprised you haven't talked about Life of Pi. Can you share some love and hate? And
I don't have any hate for that, but it's not really about what this, all right, you could say that the use of fantasy as storytelling. I worked on Life of Pi as a sort of glorified concept artist off and on for a couple of years, which is a great experience, and I loved the experience. And I remember talking to, for those of you that don't know, the use of fantasy is a coping mechanism for the protagonist to deal with the death of his family, right? So he creates a scenario where he's in a boat with all these animals from a zoo that was on the boat with him. And are they his parents? Are they stand-ins for his family? So on and so forth. I don't want to get into that. But I had a conversation with Ang when I started, and I'm like, all right, we're making this island, and I understand it's fiction, so I can handle that. But why are these damn meerkats on this island? I mean, what would they eat? And he's like, just make it meerkats. I mean, that's what it had to be because of the book and the fans and all that stuff. But that's a different thing than what I do. It's closer to Grant Wood, but it seems arbitrary, The Life of Pi, as much as I loved the movie and working on it. It's arbitrary.
Alexis, can you talk about how how the exhibit grabbed you as you walked through, what you were struck by?
Great question. How daringly bizarre most of the images are, and how you're immersed in his world, even small paintings, how immersive they are and insistent they are, and he has a singular vision. It's conflicted and confounded and a mixed bag, but it is definitely his vision. And that's really all you can ask for from an artist. I love the farm and the landscapes myself, but when I saw that Mike Pence painting, I was dying laughing. Yes?
Can you say a little bit more about Thomas Hart Benton?
Why I don't like him? Arbitrary undulations of muscle and hay. I don't know. It just doesn't grab me. It's like a thing. It makes. I don't care. Anyway, he's. I could talk about him for hours, but I like that hay painting, and I love the thing he did at the Met. So, and I like the idea of him. I just don't want to look. Yes.
Do you think there's a chance of biodiversity sort of bouncing back after all the hits it's taken? Because some of the paintings I look at of yours, it seems to me like the Earth could come back even stronger, more speciation, hybridization, or something like that. What are your thoughts?
Forget it. And the reason is population. There's just not going to be enough water for anything to live, basically, and there's not going to be a place there's not going to be any soil or anything. Feeding people is going to be enough of a problem. How these things are going to make a living, I have no idea. Sorry. Yeah.
I heard yesterday that, sorry?
Yeah, repeat question.
Sorry, if anyone else wants, I'll stop hogging it.
Thank God you're asking questions.
I heard yesterday that George Lucas is opening a museum in Los Angeles called the Museum of Narrative Art. And I've been thinking a lot today about what defines narrative art, and especially within the realm of still imagery. I personally would define it as an image that has some sort of sequential thing to it, like this and then this. But looking at some of your work and also Grant Wood's work, I'm seeing a lot of this and then this. Do you consider what you do to be narrative?
I don't really know. I mean, I have stories I tell myself that it's about, but what is narrative? I mean, I'm certainly not isn't that the realm of like writing? To me, I mean, the pitiful attempts I've had at writing show me I'm not a narrative gift. I can make hopefully compelling images of juxtaposition, but I wouldn't call it narrative. I mean, I have fantasies about what's happening, but I don't know. No. I know there's one more question, and then you can all go. Okay, Jim, thank you.
What about genetic engineering? You showed those weird cows and other animals, and
Yeah.
that looked as if they'd been genetically engineered. Don't you think that might offer some hope for our future?
I think the hope of our future is not having meat. And, simulated meat is really what, I mean, that's obviously, those images of cows are whatever. They're symbolic of something else. It's really this idea that, not having animals as food, and certainly not eating wildlife like tuna and stuff like that, I mean, that should be just off the table, right? Period. But you can never stop culture and tradition is so strong, obviously, and I'm as guilty as anyone, so I'm not on a high horse at all. But I just, objectively, that's really what has to happen. You have to have fake meat and, Soylent Green. For those of you that don't know, that's eating human bodies. Soylent Green is people.
On that note. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.